Do you have a hard time trusting yourself? Do you hide parts of yourself, your feelings, your beliefs, your ideas in order to please other people? So often we end up abandoning ourselves. Self-abandonment is a big consequence of narcissistic abuse. And we have to learn what it is and how to fix it. So today my guest is Sharon Martin. You've probably seen her on my channel before. She is a brilliant author and light in this world for us. So today we're going to talk about self-abandonment. And my name is Tracy Malone. I am the founder of narcissistabusesupport.com. I am a coach, an author, and an educator. So if you have any more questions, please visit my website. But let's start off by welcoming Sharon. She's awesome, and you're going to love this information. Hi, Sharon. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hi, Tracy. Hi, everybody.
It is always so good to see you. And I see that you have your books next to you, but I have them too.
Oh, yay.
Sharon is an author of all of these books, and today we are going to talk about self-abandonment. And to me, this is such an important topic because I teach a class in abandonment. And while some of the victims of abuse actually relate to feeling abandonment wounds from their narcissist, when I hit the self-abandonment stuff, everyone is like, I didn't know. So let's start by explaining to me, what is self-abandonment?
Yeah, I think it's a great place for us to start because we're certainly familiar with the idea of, or have had the experience, as you were saying, of actual abandonment by somebody else. And that can either be a physical, like somebody is not physically present for you when you need them to be. Probably even more common is the emotional abandonment. And that's also really what we're talking about when we're talking about self-abandonment, because we're obviously we're technically physically present with ourselves all the time, but we're not always emotionally present for ourselves. And that's the idea of self-abandonment, is really not being there for yourself, not valuing yourself, not being that cheerleader for yourself, not giving yourself support and affirmation, encouragement. Again, it's sort of like all the good stuff that you want to also, get from people outside of yourself. But more important even than getting it from other people is being able to provide that for yourself. And I think it's so important because you're going to always be there with yourself. I mean, I don't really want to say that, you can't count on other people, because I hope that everybody watching this has at least somebody that they feel like that they can, count on, that is a dependable, trustworthy person in their life. But I think if we're really honest, I mean, at the end of the day, you want to be able to count on yourself the most, because you can only control yourself, right? And so that's why it's so important that you're there for yourself, because that's something that you can make sure that you're doing. Whereas, you can do your best to create healthy relationships and develop those relationships with people who are going to be supportive. But you can't completely control, right, whether somebody is going to be honest with you, or they're going to show up like they said they were going to, again, either physically or emotionally. But you want to be able to cultivate that for yourself so that I can take care of myself. I can feel good about myself, and I can get myself through the challenges that life is going to present to me.
Absolutely. And as we both know, that the victims that come to us are, I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know. Everything I was is gone, and that's a self-abandonment, to have those principles, to have that I stand up for myself. I'm strong. I was who I was before the narcissistic relationship, right? This ties into self-love, because a lot of this that we're talking about is love yourself, care for yourself, do for yourself, right? So that ties into it. But in the way it's phrased with this, it also ties into a lot of like inner child, again, mothering yourself, nurturing yourself. So tell me about some examples so that people can start to relate.
Mm.
What does this mean?
Yes, yes. And we can go through a few. We probably won't get to all of them just for the sake of time. But I think one of the big ones is is really not trusting your own instincts about things. And this is a challenging one because, as you're, very well aware, this is definitely a function of narcissistic abuse or other forms of abuse, is that, like when you're manipulated, when you've experienced gaslighting, any of those kinds of things, you're essentially taught not to trust your own instincts. And it's a difficult place to be in. And so, I mean, it's certainly a process to try to reconnect with that part of yourself that can say, yeah, like I can listen to what's going on, both physically with my body, like the sensations that I'm getting, like those really are quite telling. But often we just aren't paying attention to them, or we're noticing them and just kind of discarding them and thinking, oh, it's probably not true. Somebody else is telling me that's wrong. And so again, we're letting somebody else's voice be stronger than our own. And so this sort of takes this like really focusing in on, what am I feeling? Again, emotionally and physically about what's happening here. And also, thinking about what is that telling me? What's the message in all of that? Because that's really the good stuff that we want to be listening to. I mean, I really think that everybody has, good instincts. It's just a question of like getting back to them and listening to them, right? I mean, that sort of gut instinct of like something feels off here. We want to listen to that. But again, like I said, it definitely can be tricky because, as a function of abuse, you may sort of not, both be listening to the instincts, or sometimes our sort of self-protection has gotten really heightened. And that's both a good thing. It's really, we need it to protect ourselves, but it can also be challenging too, because I think that also kind of ties into that. It becomes hard to trust what's real and what's not. Um, but anyway, I mean, that's definitely one aspect of self-abandonment, is just, kind of letting other people be telling you what's good for you, what's the right thing, instead of really listening to yourself. And then I think another one that's really important is that we we kind of lose track of who we are as people. And again, a lot of this you'll start to, I think, hear the themes in this as we talk about it, is that, again, like we're really focusing on who other people want us to be. And we've kind of lost like the core of who am I? And that can be, something like, what are my interests? What are my personal goals? Or it could be things like your values, what really matters to you in life. And you kind of get sidetracked sometimes, because you're so focused on other people and taking care of them or meeting their needs or just not enraging them, right? That you're sort of, kind of living your life for other people, making them happy, instead of thinking about, okay, what is it that matters to me? What would be fulfilling for me? Right. I've let go of that. I've abandoned myself in that sense of, I'm prioritizing other people above myself. I mean, we really want to find some balance in that. I think a lot of folks, when they hear those kinds of things, like, well, I don't want to be selfish, right? I don't want to think too much about myself, or be too self-centered. But really, that's fairly unlikely, for people that tend to be, by their nature, quite self-sacrificing. It's unlikely that you're going to get to the other extreme. And really what we're talking about is just like finding some balance here of, we care about other people and we're interested in making them happy, but we can't just do that at our own expense all the time, and just completely discount who we are, and what matters to us.
Yeah, it's such an important thing because this also ties to both of your books, if you think about it, right? Setting boundaries. I was talking to a group last night. Setting boundaries is foreign to victims of abuse because they weren't allowed to. So that's, again, speaking up and saying, no, I don't want to do that. I'd prefer to sit home and read a book today, right?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it has to do with that, setting boundaries. And I think there's a tie to perfectionism, if I'm
Hmm.
not mistaken, because
Yes.
I was such a perfectionist and I thought I was doing the right thing. I was like, but I know now that that tied to, the recordings of my parents and you better do this, you better do that. And even, just keeping up with the Joneses as my growing up brought me, that perfectionism, how does it tie to this self-abandonment?
Yeah, you're right, and I'll answer the perfectionism, and then I'll touch back around to the boundaries too, because they both do tie in. And with perfectionism, really, what's underneath that again is this feeling of not being good enough, and like feeling like there's something kind of fundamentally inadequate about yourself, and so you're always trying to prove that you're good enough, that you're worthy. And so it's very much about seeking some kind of achievement or some kind of validation from outside of yourself to affirm, that you are good enough. And so when we're in that kind of mindset, we're setting these impossibly high standards for ourselves, such high expectations that we can't possibly meet them. Um, and so again, there's this element of like we kind of lose track of sometimes what's really important to us, because we're so focused on the achievement or the making somebody else happy, or hitting that goal, that we kind of, it's like we lose the process. Try to enjoy that process. It's all about the outcome, and it's either a success or it's a failure. It's like there's no middle ground for a perfectionist. They're always berating themselves for even inconsequential mistakes. It doesn't matter how big or how small the mistake is really intolerable. So we've developed this awful self-critic, which again, when you think about this idea of self-abandonment, like how is that being there for yourself, right? If you're your worst critic and you're always on your own case about you have to do better, or that's not good enough, or try harder, right, something along those lines, we want to move away from that and kind of have that compassionate side of ourselves be able to take the center stage, because that's really that loving approach to sort of nurturing ourselves. I think both to enjoy the process, and see that there's value in that, but that ultimately I think this compassion is also going to get us to where we want to be, with our goals and the things that we want to accomplish as well, so we can really do both. And then going back to what you were saying about boundaries, what we want to remember about boundaries is that boundaries are really about they should one of the purposes of boundaries is for us to get our needs met, right? And so when we're setting a limit, we're saying no, I can't do that, right? That's a way to meet a particular need that you have, and that might be a need for time to yourself, or time to rest, or time to spend with your family. It could be a need for respect, any number of things, but that's really what a boundary is about. And if you're not setting boundaries, it's often because you really don't feel like your needs are valid. Like they don't matter. Everybody else's needs are more important, so if you need me to do something, to help you out, and I am constantly prioritizing that over, my need to take care of myself, or even my need for, to socialize, or to, rest, or something like that. Those are also valid needs, right? It's not just a need to work and achieve things. Um, so we've lost that sense of value in ourselves, and saying, hey, it's okay for me to have needs. This is completely normal. And, for me to be a healthy and happy person, I need to, prioritize my needs and take care of them. And sometimes that's going to mean, me setting a limit, or me saying, hey, I can't do that. That's not going to work for me. So again, absolutely, like you were saying, if you're not setting boundaries, that is a different, form of that self-abandonment, where you're just like saying, oh, I'm not that important. You
Walk all
guys,
over me.
right, exactly. Walk all over me is sort of the invitation, right?
Mhm.
Yes, that's what I sometimes say, that, you're sort of treating yourself like a doormat, or letting everybody else treat you like a doormat, because you're not saying no to anything, or the equivalent of, yeah, hey, that doesn't work.
Exactly. And it's again, it's almost like a side effect of narcissistic abuse, because they probably weren't allowed to set boundaries. And the perfectionism comes in because if you make a mistake, you're on eggshells and it's not right and you're going to get yelled at. So you try and you try. And if I just do this right, then maybe then I won't get yelled at. And then we'll be back to the happy couple. And, it
Yeah,
builds and escalates inside of us. And then there's this abandonment where your needs are simply not getting met. And
yeah.
so um, I love what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, again, I don't need to tell you this, but just as a reminder for folks that are watching, it can also be, I think, that you may have just tried to set boundaries and they don't work with a narcissist. And that is true. I mean, sort of the typical approach to setting boundaries with a narcissist is not going to work, which again, I'm sure everybody watching this has tried it and failed. And it's not a personal failure, it's a function of that dysfunctional relationship. Um, but there are other ways actually to set boundaries, and I talk about some of that in the book, is that you have to shift away from trying to get the other person to change, because somebody who's a narcissist or has a personality disorder is very unlikely to change. So we want to, we don't want to waste our time and energy on trying to get them to change, with our boundaries. Instead, we want to use, shift our approach with boundaries so that we can protect ourselves. But it is a different approach to doing it.
Absolutely. And when you're talking about perfection, again, it goes back to the fear and the eggshells, like, again, if I fail at making the perfect dinner party and, oh, the glasses aren't lined up or whatever those very minor details
Yeah.
are, and we don't do them, then we label ourselves with failure. So
Hmm.
we are self-abusing ourselves by not going, it's okay to make a mistake. I embrace mistakes. I will put a scrape across my dining room table and go, oh well, I'm good. Whereas before
Yeah.
it driven me crazy and I would have called someone to repair it. And oh my God, that's the worst thing that ever happened. And now I just don't give a shit.
But and that's good, and we can laugh about it, but I also am sure that there was a whole process of getting there, because it's not easy to move from, being in that place of, again, it's like there's a real fear and anxiety that you can hear, underneath that story of, either what are people going to think if they see, this, or they know about this mistake, and also, what do I think about myself? And again, it's like we are magnifying how, bad this is, or what the consequences are going to be of it. And we really need to, think about the particulars of the situation, because, certainly some mistakes do have significant consequences, but most of the stuff that we're, criticizing ourselves for really doesn't. And that's we have to be able to make that distinction. Like, it's not all, you know, 100% terrible, right? There's this idea of something we call this catastrophizing, where we make the little thing into this giant catastrophe, and I think it's like, the end of the world, the end of my life, the end of my job, the end of my marriage, when I've done something. And usually it's something that either is a consequence very small, or something that you can repair and move on, right? And sort of look for that lesson in it, and like, okay, well, stuff happens, we're all humans, we make mistakes, even when we're trying our best, we're just not going to be perfect at everything.
Mhm.
um
No.
which we know. But if you also think about, I mean, and what would life be like if we were? I mean, it's like we think that's what we want, but then I think we'd really just be robots, right? You know what I mean? Like, that is sort of this core piece of being human, is, that we're imperfect. And I try to remember, I mean, that this is often the stuff, where we really connect, and form relationships with other people. So when we talk about our mistakes, the things that haven't gone well, because that's the stuff that we actually relate to about each other, right? We don't really relate about the perfect Instagram, picture of your vacation. I was like, oh, that's nice, but that's not where I really connect with somebody and feel like, oh, I understand you and you understand me, right? It's really when we say, oh yeah, that was really hard, or I didn't do so well with that, or can you help me out with this, or something along those lines. That's sort of the real meaty, piece of a relationship. And when we're going through life, like either pretending like we're perfect, or needing to act like we're perfect, sort of because we're in a really difficult relationship, you don't have that level of connection, right? You end up kind of at this surface level with people often.
Yeah. Yeah. So what we're talking about here is the reasons and why people abandon themselves. We're talking about the narcissistic, fears of making and being perfect, and the eggshells and the fear of that. What other reasons and how other ways do people abandon themselves? Like, why do they do it? Is it from childhood sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, like, right. We're sort of talking about things, maybe in the present context of, abuse that people might have experienced like more recently in their lives. And that certainly, can play a big impact. We know that can really be destructive to our self-worth or self-esteem. I think probably for most people, I mean, we can look back further and see, some of those roots in childhood, because that's often where we're really developing these ideas about ourselves and our worth and how we relate in the world. And the challenge is that sometimes, we don't really remember, the specific messages, in terms of things that maybe people said. Um, but often what happens is we start to get messages when we're young about who we are, what people think of us. And then those get reinforced over time, both by people out, in our lives, generally adults. It could be siblings or other people that you're close to, but think about parents and teachers or other people that were influential. And you have to remember that little kids they're easily influenced, right? I mean, they sort of are little sponges that suck up what people tell them about themselves, and you believe it. Um, that's just, I think the function of where they're at developmentally, their brain development at that stage. So you really don't have the ability to have critical thinking and really interrogate that idea and say, oh, my teacher said I was stupid. Is that really true? And you have basically no life experience either to help you, look at that. And these are the advantages of adulthood, is that we have critical thinking and we have a lot more life experience so that we can really look at those ideas and decide if they're accurate and they make sense, to us. But anyway, and then, the thing that sort of adds on to it is that we get these messages from other people and then we assume they're true. So we just keep repeating them to ourselves. Not generally on a conscious level, but we're thinking, oh, I'm stupid. And then the next time I, get a bad grade on my test, maybe not even that bad, but maybe it's not 100, right? Then I use that and I say, oh, well, there's more proof that I'm stupid, right? And it's not necessarily really very good proof, right? Because I said it doesn't even have to be that you got an F on that test. Maybe you got a C, but to you that feels really bad. It's not 100. So like I said, I mean, you start to create this story about who you are and, what your worth is in the world, or what you need to do to get people's approval or love or attention. And that carry, we just take that with us everywhere we go. And that becomes, this defining story of who you are. And then we act accordingly, right? I mean, this then influences, our relationships, our work, our self-esteem, really everything that we're doing, all these choices that we're talking about, the way that we relate to ourself even becomes part of that.
Absolutely. And it's all, again, we all have to understand how this ties into us, because if we don't, we are going to abandon ourselves. It's the little pieces. It's the learn to set boundaries. It's a learn your perfectionism. It's learn where this came from and really start to change the way you're thinking about yourself, right? And give yourself permission to make a mistake. Give yourself a permission that, oh, I can speak up here. I can say, I really don't want that. I'd rather do this. It's slow, as you said in the beginning. It is not something with, all done, we're done.
Right.
It is try it. And some people are going to be responsive to it. Some are not, but it's how you take back and stop abandoning yourself, is to start caring for yourself
Yeah.
like you would for someone else.
Yeah. And this is, and I love, explaining this, in a conversation, because it's it's much easier than trying to explain it when I write something. I feel like, because this is, I think, where people get kind of hung up, is often I think people can embrace the idea that yes, self-compassion would be helpful, Or they say, oh, I'm watching this video about self-abandonment. Clearly that's not a good thing. I shouldn't abandon myself. Um, but when we're sort of feeling like, but I have to feel good about myself. I have to feel like I'm worthwhile in order to, be there for myself, in order to change some of these behaviors. Um, and that's not necessarily true. I mean, this can sort of go one or two ways, which is we can say, okay, let me try to feel good about myself, and then my feelings then will, that will result in behavior change also. But the other thing, going the other direction actually can work just as well. And I think sometimes it's easier for people to say, okay, let me act like somebody who cares about themselves. And
Mhm.
then by doing the behavior, eventually the feeling will come.
That makes
Because
sense.
my concern is, right, if we're sort of waiting until we feel worthwhile, we might be waiting a long time, because it's hard to cultivate just a feeling. Right, I mean, we could do some things, I mean, some affirmations, or some things that would sort of bring about that. But I think probably it's easier if you just say, okay, I want to change this behavior. I want to behave like a person who is self-compassionate. What would that person do? And I think, like you were saying, often the best way to, envision this is think, okay, well, what if there was another person here, right? What if this was somebody that, a dear friend of mine that I really care about? Um, what would I say to her or to him? Um, and we can really just translate that back to ourselves, because it's so. I mean, in some ways, it's such a simple concept. Um, but it is so striking, the difference that you will find between how you treat yourself and how you treat an actual dear friend in your life. I
Mhm.
mean, you know what I mean? Like, it's like you just would never, ever say the things that you say to yourself to that friend, right? I mean, and this is the thing, it's like we all actually know how to be compassionate. I think, probably everybody listening to this, has the skills within them. So it's not even so much that you need to learn a whole new skill set. It's
Mhm.
really just about, okay, applying that to yourself and trying to get out of your head about, do I deserve it? Right, I'm going to sort of ask people, like, just to, try on the idea of, it doesn't matter if you feel like you deserve it or not. I want you to just do it anyway.
Mhm.
Right, because that's a human, that's like treating yourself with, like, human kindness.
Mhm.
Or even, I mean, again, I mean, you can think about your pets, if that's easier for people. I think, most people, can love their pets unconditionally, and they don't really ask, well, does my dog deserve dinner? It's like, no, you just feed your dog because that's the right thing to do. Right, and sort of try the same thing with yourself, is just do it for yourself, without this, idea of, oh, like, should I be doing this? Is it right? Is it wrong? And again, I know it's like asking some people to really go out on a limb with this idea of trying it. But I think you might be surprised that if you do it enough, it will start to feel more comfortable.
Mhm.
um, at the beginning, it's going to feel really weird, if you're not ever kind to yourself, and you start saying something nice to yourself, or taking a little time for yourself, or writing in a journal, or, you know pursuing a hobby or something like that, and you're like, oh, this is really awkward and uncomfortable, and I'm not sure if it's right. But what you want to do is you want to just keep with it. You want to stick with it, for a month or two, because it's going to take that long probably for it to start to feel any sense of, familiarity, for yourself.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I think that's the other thing. It's like, don't quit too soon, right? It will feel awkward at the beginning, when you start to make a shift towards caring about yourself, and, treating yourself like you would somebody that you care about.
It's self-compassion, and it's fake it till you make it. Like, it's just take that step and go, I do deserve that. I just got back from a vacation by myself for my birthday, the first time in 62 years that I was like alone on my birthday. And I was like, I deserve this. I can't wait. I'm so excited. And I had the best time. And people were like, weren't you lonely? I met people every day. Like, it was amazing. You get to meet more people when you're alone, because if you were with your little thing, their nucleus, they're a nucleus, nobody talks to you, right? You go on a boat trip and you meet all of these wonderful, amazing
Yeah.
people, share stories with you, and it's such a cool experience. So it is about taking that chance, going, I've never taken a vacation by myself. Why don't I try that? Okay,
Right.
maybe that's too far. Let me go to dinner by myself.
Hmm.
Let me go to a movie by myself, right? When you start to fall in love with yourself, then things change. And I'm not saying, oh, I love myself like a narcissist. I'm saying I respect myself and
Yeah.
I deserve what I would have done if there was someone else there, right? I have a friend who just like hasn't bought flowers for her porch all year long, right? Okay, fine, that's fine. But then this guy comes into her life, boom, she buys the flowers. And I'm like, the whole summer is gone. If you really wanted the flowers, why did it take till someone else was coming
Right.
trying to
Right.
get them? Give yourself the darn flowers
Yeah.
and and go, I deserve that. Instead of, oh, the guests are coming, now we can fix everything up. Take care of yourself,
Right.
your
Don't
space,
just,
your life.
yeah. Yeah. Don't just do it for somebody else. But yeah, if it's important to you, do it for yourself, even if nobody else is going to see it.
You know, it's a common thing, especially when people get single after a divorce or something. You know, it's really hard to cook for yourself, so they kind of don't do it.
Yeah.
But guests come, boom, there's a big dinner. So now I make one big dinner on the weekend and I eat it all week
Hmm.
long, right?
Hmm.
Take care of myself that way because I deserve it. And I don't have time every night. So again, it's finding the happy place that makes you eat the way you want, makes you do
Hmm.
what you want, makes you have fun
Yeah.
regardless.
But
If
I do want to reiterate one thing, Tracy, because
But
I know that you have done a lot of work to get to the place where now you can say, I deserve it.
right.
Right. So that rolls off the tongue and it feels good and you know it's true. But
Mhm.
I think, right, for the people that are starting out, like I said, don't worry if you don't actually feel like you deserve it. The key is do it anyway.
Yeah.
Right. So even if you're like, I'm not sure if it's worth buying flowers if no one's going to see it, or I'm not sure if it's worth cooking dinner if I'm the only one eating it, or, setting the table or whatever it is, if it's something that feels interesting and important to you, um, go ahead and do it. Um,
Baby
right.
step.
Yeah,
Yeah.
baby steps. And yeah, don't get yourself hung up on this, whether you deserve it or not, because Tracy and I are just going to be, here to say everybody deserves to be treated with respect and to be valued and to be cared about. And, the most important person that can come from is you doing it for you. Because I think the other thing that we haven't really touched on here is that I think when you are doing these things for yourself, you're not only like cultivating this, compassion for yourself and this self-esteem, but you're also starting to show the rest of the world how you expect to be treated, right?
Mhm.
Because when you're doing it for yourself, I think it then becomes harder for you to tolerate other people abandoning you, other people not treating you with respect, other people not treating you with dignity, and any of those kinds of things, right? Because we are starting to, feel good about ourselves, and we're starting to say, yes, this is the right way to be treated. This is the way I want to be treated.
Mhm.
And then if, right, if you have family or other, friends that you're in close contact with, they're gonna, if you keep this up, they're gonna start to see that you're treating yourself differently. And I think that starts to become also something that they can see, and then they can start to treat you in that same way as well. And also, again, it's great, practice for setting the boundaries, because like I said, you're just going to be less willing to tolerate mistreatment from other people when you're treating yourself well, because you're really, getting that, you're, comfortable with the idea, and it's starting to feel really good, and you're saying, yeah, this is the right thing, right? This is how people should be treated. I'm not going to put up with other people, treating me less than.
Yeah. And again, this makes us less narc bait, right? We're
Exactly.
strong. We know what we want. We're not going to take it. You break my boundaries. That's it, right? We have built up a foundation, like you just said, that they're not going to mess with, or we won't tolerate. They'll try to mess with it,
Yeah.
but you're not going to tolerate it anymore because you feel that value of yourself.
Yeah.
So this has been
Absolutely.
great. Did we miss anything? Did we forget anything?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that wrapped up nicely with those different components of, really this idea of trying to just start with some small ways to appreciate yourself, love yourself, do nice things for yourself, say nice things to yourself, try to be, give yourself that compassionate voice of, what wish other people were saying to you. And, get a, don't worry about whether you deserve it, do it, get used to it. And I love, the way you phrase that, that it really starts to create this, shield against future abuse, right? You're sort of narc proofing yourself in that way, because I absolutely believe that you're not going to tolerate it when you're treating yourself well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again for joining me. I love it when you are here. Everybody, Sharon, tell us where they can find you. We'll put your
Mhm.
URL along the bottom, but where do they find you, and how do they find out more about your amazing things that you do?
Thank you. Yep. So my website is livewellwithsharonmartin.com. It's a little bit of mouthful, but get over there. And yes, I've got lots of stuff that's boundaries, perfectionism, codependency, self-esteem, a lot of those topics. And the books that Tracy showed and mentioned, the Better Boundaries workbook and the CBT workbook for perfectionism. They're both available pretty much at any bookstore. Wherever you buy books, you should be able to find those.
And I'm going to make a plug for you to everybody follow you on on Pinterest, and Instagram too, but Pinterest, like, she's the queen. And this is how the topic came up, was
Mm.
because I saw this meme and I went, oh, Sharon. I'm like, we need to talk about this. She does amazing work, and there's so much out there for you guys as resources. So please look her up. She's such a valuable asset to this community and to the world. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. Thank you. Feeling is mutual.
I hope you guys found that helpful. I'm not hoping that you feel that you relate to self-abandonment, but it is a huge part of what we have to understand and start to learn to heal. As Sharon says, it takes a while. It's baby steps. It's try it. It's test it. It's see if you can like yourself, if you can be your own best friend, if you can buy those flowers for yourself. Try it. It will work, and it will be a life changer, because narcissists don't really mess with people that have self-respect. They are looking for the people pleasers, boundaryless victims that are easy to exploit. So get firm on who you are and start to love yourself, and then you won't have this self-abandonment wound to deal with, and it will repel narcissists from you. So we like that idea. So this is Tracy Malone. Thank you so much for watching. If you watched this all the way through and you made it this far, please subscribe to my channel and leave a comment down below. We really appreciate Sharon being here. So thank you all, and I'll see you next time.